Alrighty everyone, welcome back. It is now September 6th of 2023. Now, in case you guys have been very unaware about everything related to the Star Wars franchise, we have some projects that have been delayed. One great example is the Skeleton Crew series has been removed off of Disney's release schedule for 2023, which is a big telltale sign that it is indeed being moved until 2024, but there's a lot of drama stirring around Lucasfilm right now behind closed doors involving Lucasfilm's Kathleen Kennedy and why she recently got in serious trouble with the Disney higher-ups. Let's discuss. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the great and kind support. And let's get right into the subject, shall we? Now, we know that there's been a lot of things happening between Kathleen Kennedy and George Lucas over at Lucasfilm, such as his philosophy, right? Specifically, George Lucas's philosophy, to be very, direct here, is that she is essentially trying to corrupt that with the up-and-coming Acolyte series and Skeleton Crew. And we've talked about this before in the past, that Leslye Headland, the showrunner of the Acolyte, is a radical Lucasfilm creator. She herself has said on the record in a podcast that if you believe that George Lucas is the key to Star Wars and is the only one in the room that can solve the success of the brand, then you're a misogynist, or that's the misogyny and that's the problem. Now, anyway, moving onwards, this is where things begin to really unravel, revolving around why Kathleen Kennedy got in serious trouble with the Disney higher-ups. Now, with Disney and Lucasfilm going through many issues related to their Star Wars franchise with their upcoming movies and shows, one major development has to do with Kathleen Kennedy and what she recently did that put herself into serious trouble with Disney. One big piece of trouble that Kathleen Kennedy recently got herself into was that she ended up overfunding the upcoming series of The Acolyte, and recently had showrunner Leslye Headland cut out all said scenes for the final cut of The Acolyte that were used for the overfunding of the show. Essentially, Kathleen Kennedy requested extra funds for The Acolyte by Disney for high-budget scenes that recently went into a complete waste after re-edits have been underway at Lucasfilm for the Acolyte series, which is described to be Disney's biggest DEI-driven Star Wars project yet. In fact, it is described to be a series that will indeed create division within the fandom, due to the change in storyline and the change from George Lucas's philosophy of Star Wars. Disney reportedly is very furious with Kennedy over these latest decisions for the new Acolyte series. Now guys, let me just stop here for 1 second. I don't know if you saw the leaked footage of the Acolyte sizzle reel that actually debuted back in April at Star Wars Celebration. It was a series of leaked scenes that only the attendees were able to see, by the way. And we know that Carrie-Anne Moss is the star of the show. And Leslye Headland herself said, "The Acolyte is a mixture of The Matrix, it's a mixture of Mission Impossible, Frozen, all these big franchises mashed up into one, and kind of just putting it in your face like that. It's going to be very distant from George Lucas's Star Wars, it's going to be very distant from the expanded universe Star Wars, and I don't know about you guys, but there's been a lot of ups and downs with Star Wars to the point where I feel a lot of fans have become very unstable about the franchise, and their expectations are very low, especially when it comes to a show like The Acolyte. Now, as we discussed earlier this week, The Acolyte is and will be the most DEI-driven Star Wars project yet by Disney. It's going to be very much catered to, all of the agendas on the board by Disney, and to the 10th degree here, something like you've never seen before. It's going to be very equality-driven, very much equity-driven, diversity-driven, and that's the problem, because that's when you drive yourself away from the story, that's when you drive yourself away from character development, and Kathleen Kennedy gets herself into this big trouble for this main reason of overfunding this project and taking the scenes out of the final cut. This is very similar, sort of similar to what happened with Indiana Jones, The Dial of Destiny, where she requested multiple scenes by Disney to be used in Indy 5 that went to a complete waste. So for those of you that don't know, there were supposed to be more de-aging sequences of Harrison Ford as Indiana in flashbacks that actually did happen, but they were cut. And that cost Disney quite a number for, you know, allowing that to even take its course, and how Kathleen Kennedy sabotaged it. So anyway, moving onwards. Now, the board members, in a shocking turn of events, have been putting Kennedy in a tight spot related to these actions, as they are now going to be drastically cutting back on funds for the marketing of The Acolyte in response to Kennedy ditching tons of scenes that cost Disney tens of millions of dollars. The cutbacks of the planned marketing is said to be Disney's way of balancing things out for the spending of this project, and the latest controversy has put Kathleen Kennedy in the hot seat. Additionally, Leslye Headland is also involved in the re-edits of the show that's focusing more on scenes related to Disney's DEI agenda. Kennedy's deal for the Acolyte spin-off series is also now at stake and may face a cancellation in response to Kennedy's awful business moves with the Acolyte that cost Disney tons of money. Now again, I've said this multiple times throughout this year, that the Acolyte is going to be one of the Star Wars shows that's really going to make the series feel very alienated. And what I mean by that is, it's going to feel very distant from what you're familiar with. If you like the original George Lucas 6 Star Wars movies, if you like, for example, Rogue One, which I believe is probably Disney's closest example of George Lucas' Star Wars, that's just my take on things. If you like those films, this show is going to be very, very different. And Leslye Headland herself even said that it was all about embracing something for new fans, not for George Lucas fans. It's all about really kind of putting something on a blank canvas and starting fresh. And this is another reason why I believe it's only going to divide the fandom more, and it could very well be the break for the franchise. Now, we know that the Ahsoka series has had a lot of mixed reviews based on what's been going on for episodes 1 through 4. 4 now being reported as the best episode by fan responses because of the lightsaber duels and some appearances that we'll talk about a little bit later. But ultimately, you know, there's also a lot of fans that really view it as nothing more than fan service. You know, we have a lot of different views on the Ahsoka show, so to speak. And so, the fact that this may very well be the last show of 2023, given that Skeleton Crew is now reportedly delayed until 2024, and getting mixed in with the Acolyte series and Andor Season 2, you know, upping it to 3 Star Wars shows for next year, that may or may not be a good business move for this year. We'll have to wait and see. But overall, Kathleen Kennedy really made a very bad call here. You don't overfund the show and request all these high-budget scenes to be made, only to have them canceled, only to have Disney lose tens of millions of dollars for all the episodes bundled together, by the way. It just doesn't work, and that's why she's in trouble. So anyway, guys, drop a comment below, fill me in below in the comments what you all have to say about this, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys next time.